Week 5 of the college faculty strike coming to an end with the Liberals looking to table back-to-work legislation, but the NDP trying to shut it down. Let's get over to our Tammie Southerland with the latest on this controversial bill and what students and parents should know. Good morning, Tammie.
Good morning, Melanie. Well, it really was an emotional roller coaster yesterday for the 500,000 students who have been out of the classroom for over a month now. It started off yesterday morning when it was announced that OPSEU members, the striking faculty, actually voted overwhelmingly to reject the College Employer Council's final offer. And that led to a meeting with Kathleen Wynne between both sides when talks broke down. Following that, the province announcing that they would be tabling back-to-work legislation to get those students back into the classroom next week. However, that was then blocked by the NDP last night. So definitely it has been tense since the beginning of this college strike. OPSEU President Warren Smokey Thomas speaking to us about the issue yesterday.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen some very stubborn people stubbornly hang on to untenable positions, and the Employer Council is exactly what they did today.
And when it comes to the back-to-work legislation, that will once again be the topic of debate at Queen's Park today. At 3 o'clock, it will be once again tabled, and the legislature is prepared to sit through the entire weekend until that legislation is passed. Now, coming up in about half an hour's time, we're going to be speaking to JP Hornick, who is the head of bargaining for OPSEU, to get their reaction to what happened yesterday. Melanie, I'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Tammie, thank you for that. The Liberals attempting to table back-to-work legislation as week 5 of the college strike comes to an end, but the NDP blocking the bill from being introduced. So what do striking staff think of this whole process? Let's get over to Tammie Southerland. You have on standby union spokesperson JP Hornick with you. Good morning, Tammie.
Good morning, Melanie. That's right. We have JP Hornick from OPSEU here with us. First off, tell us your thoughts about the fact that back-to-work legislation was attempted yesterday and then blocked by the NDP.
I mean, I think that what we have happening here is that the council failed to make any movement in negotiations, even after being directed to by the premier and deputy premier, and so they had to step in and try and introduce this legislation. This legislation doesn't include any guidance on, what our current working conditions are. If we have an existing collective agreement, there's no return to work protocol about how to get us back into classes and salvage this semester at the direction of the colleges. This was a point that they are very adamant about. So, I'm as concerned as anyone about how this is going to play out over the next few days.
Okay, so there's no idea what students can expect in terms of trying to salvage at least the semester that has passed?
Yeah, I mean, faculty will, I'm sure, do an immense amount of work trying to do this, but, we need some direction about how we're getting back into the classrooms, not just that the colleges are reopening. I mean, we've lost 5 weeks of class. We have 5 weeks of our faculty being on the lines, our students walking with us, but, starting this back up isn't just a simple process of get back in your classroom. It's about how do you actually meet those learning outcomes.
Now, there were reports that OPSEU had asked that each member receive a $5,000 bonus for signing this contract. Is that the case?
No, that was absolutely untrue and terrible misinformation. I mean, the College Council has an independent public relations firm that is putting out incredible misinformation on this. What we had asked for in the 2 hours or 2.5 hours that the Premier gave us to find a deal was we said, let's go to status quo, the items we've agreed on, and a return to work protocol that will actually get faculty into the classrooms well. We also asked for our faculty to be reimbursed for the 2 extra weeks that Council prolonged the strike for this forced offer vote that our people rejected at 86%. 95% of our members voted and rejected this offer. Council refused to budge at all. They made 0 moves in the period of time that the Premier directed them to get creative and find a deal, and instead they continued to stonewall.
And lastly, your thoughts on the NDP blocking this legislation. We know that eventually it will pass. So to block it now is, again, delaying the return to class. Your thoughts on that?
You know, look, right now what the NDP is doing is actually standing up for workers. I mean, what they've told us to do is get back into the classrooms, but there's no guidance on how to do that. So imposing back to work legislation that has no protections for the faculty who've actually been on strike for 5 weeks. We want to be back in the classrooms, but I understand why the NDP is doing what they're doing. Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. Again, that's JP Hornick from OPSEU. Again, that back to work legislation will be, of course, the topic of debate at Queen's Park starting later this afternoon. Mel, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Tammie. And later on this morning, we're going to be hearing from Deputy Premier Deb Matthews, as well as Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horvath, to get their take on how the day will go. So that's coming up a little bit later on. And our top story right now, week 5 of the college faculty strike coming to an end, with the Liberals looking to table back-to-work legislation, but the NDP trying to shut it down. Let's get over to Tammie Southerland, breaking it all down for us. And you're getting a reaction from the College Employer Council on how this day will unfold. Tammie.
Yeah, that's right, Melanie. We're here now with Don Sinclair, the CEO of the College Employer Council. First off, we just spoke to OPSEU. They claimed that yesterday in talks, they really broke down because the council did not budge at all. Is that the case?
No, we got a number of items done yesterday. We got agreed to items were confirmed, but OPSEU wanted a $5,000 signing bonus, and that was just not on. And so we tried our best to get a settlement, and it just didn't happen.
Okay. OPSEU also says that there right now is no return to work protocol. So they're concerned that once students are heading back to class sometime next week, that it may be chaos. They don't know how they're going to reconfigure the semester.
Yeah, I wouldn't have described it as chaos. What will happen in the previous situations where this has occurred, colleges will bring faculty in a day or two in advance of classes and get the things sorted out so that the students can complete their academic year. So it usually the faculty come in for 1 or 2 days, and then colleges will announce when classes begin.
Okay. And do you think that classes will begin on Monday? Is there a chance?
I think that that will be very difficult because I understand it takes sometimes up to 5 days to pass legislation, but students should be in class sometime by midweek, and we're just pleased to see that this kind of come to an end.
And so Monday, again, likely won't be class. If it is next week sometime that they start, what can students expect once they get back into class? Is there a chance that they may have to work through the Christmas holidays?
Well, colleges are closed between Christmas and New Year's. I understand a number of colleges have already started to extend the fall semester to December 22nd, and so they've made those announcements so the students can plan their travel arrangements. So they'll take a look at it. There is a bit of elasticity in our programming, like Reading Week may get canceled, so they'll roll that out as the students come back.
Okay, Don, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, that back-to-work legislation we've been talking about will be back on the table again at Queen's Park at 3 o'clock. And coming up later, we'll be speaking to Deb Matthews, the Deputy Premier, about whether or not students can expect any kind of refund or compensation as well. Mel, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tammie. We're also going to be hearing from Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horvath. She'll be joining us in studio in the next half hour. It'll be interesting to see how this day pans out. Thank you for that.
And Tammie Southerland is Queen's Park with the Deputy Premier, telling us what the Minister of Advanced Education thinks about all of this. Tammie?
Yeah, that's right, Kevin. And when you were talking to Andrea Horvath back there at the station, she said that the NDP would not facilitate any games when it comes to back-to-work legislation. So we're joined now by the Minister of Advanced Education and Skills Development, Deb Matthews. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. First off, your reaction to the legislation being blocked yesterday and the fact that you will likely have to work through the weekend in order to get this all going.
So we're happy to work round the clock all weekend as long as it takes to get students back. But I was very, very disappointed that the NDP yesterday chose to block passage of the legislation, or block introduction of the legislation. This has dragged on for too long. Students are the ones who are paying the price. They need to get back in the classroom on Monday. And that means we have to pass that legislation today. So that to give the colleges time to get up and running for Monday. So I understand that the NDP does not support back-to-work legislation, but both sides said they had reached a stalemate. It was an impasse. They could not find common ground. So at that point, government has to step up. That's what we've done. We could have passed this yesterday. We could have passed it yesterday so students today would know they're going back Monday, faculty would know they're going back Monday. The peace of mind would have been tremendous, and so I'm very happy that we are going to eventually get this passed. I hope that's all signs are pointing that way, but we could do it. We could have done it yesterday, right, if the NDP had actually not blocked it.
Now, when it comes to compensation for students, they've been out of the classroom now for more than 5 weeks. What can students expect in terms of any kind of compensation or refunds?
Well, if the semester is recovered, and we have every reason to believe that the semester will be recovered, that every program will be able to make that plan to complete the semester, then we'll be looking at hardship cases. We've directed every college to set aside their net savings from the strike. That will be returned to students. We're working out now what form that would take. But we've heard heartbreaking stories about students who have put their life savings into going back, who've put all of their hopes and their dreams into going back, and are feeling really devastated now. But I want to assure those students that there is a recovery plan in place for every program. It's going to be a hard few weeks for those students to get caught up and continue to complete the semester, but it's possible.
When do you anticipate students being back in the classroom next week?
We absolutely could say Monday, but we need the legislature to facilitate that. We need the NDP to support that. The process in the legislature requires that for some things we need unanimous consent. What that means is that one member could block proceeding, and what we want to do is get the legislation passed, give students the peace of mind, let them breathe again, is that they know they're going to be back on Monday.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, that's Minister Deb Matthews joining us here. And again, at 3 o'clock today is when the back to work legislation is expected to be introduced here at Queen's Park. You're watching Breakfast Television. We'll be right back after this break.